In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the network synchronization data that is sent from a NetworkSync script. We know that by default, the network sync will send position and orientation information about a game object over the network to all the other clients that are in the same areas as the object. But the question remains of, what if there's more information that I need to send about an object? What if I want to send color information 10 times a second? Or I need to display some sort of status bar, or maybe that this network object isn't an actual game object that has a physical representation in our scene at all. Maybe this network object is actually something along the lines of our team chat icons or some other UI element where I want to be able to send information 10 times a second, but it's not position and orientation information. So let's take a look. We're going to take a look at this NetworkSync script. In here, one of the things that this does, remember, is inside the update function, at whatever the broadcast frequency is, it will bundle up all of the data that should be broadcast over the network about this object, and then send it off to the server for processing and distribution to the other clients connected to the game. Inside this broadcast sync function, which we'll find just below here in the network synchronization script, this does a few things. One, it creates this memory stream object and a binary writer object. And this may be tweaked, the actual details of how this works, but in general, this is the functionality that it's looking for. It essentially takes this data and it packs a bunch of information into it and then hands it over to the client network to then send to the server. What information it packs in there is a couple things. The first thing that it does is it calls this GetData function if one exists. This is the place for you to hook up any custom information or any custom data that you want sent over the network, 10 times a second with the rest of the information that's broadcast with the network sync. After it gathers the data that you may custom send with the object, it then adds the position and the rotation into this data to send over the network. Finally, it calls this function on the client network, sync network data. Let's go take a look at what this does. The sync network data method of the client network first determines if we're actually connected to the server. And the next thing that it does is it builds a lidgrin, which is this net outgoing message. It builds a lidgrin net outgoing message object. On this object, it packs a bunch of information in here. The first is the network ID of the object sending this information. The next is our position, XYZ. And then finally our rotation or our orientation, which is a quaternion. So it's going to have an X, Y, Z, as well as a W component. Finally, the last thing that it does is it specifies the length of additional information that it's sending, which is just a number of bytes. And then finally, it packs those bytes into this message, which then gets sent off to the server. That's what the send message function does here at the very bottom. Looking at how that extra information is packed in there or how that's defined is entirely up to you. This getData function, which is defined up here at the very top of the network synchronization script, this getData function here, this can be defined by you by your additional scripts. One example for how this getData function and setData function, the additional data that can get sent along with a network sync component, is used, can be found here in the default network interpolated transform script. In the awake function of our network interpolated transform, it sets the functions for the getData and setData equal to the getData and the setData functions here in the network interpolated transform script. In these functions, the network sync component will call the getSyncData function whenever it's going to send a message to the server. What it's looking for you to do is to add any additional information that you would like to send into this binary writer. In this example, we write a single value, which is this amp, and then it sets the position of the network sync equal to the local rotation and position. when we receive broadcast information from the server about a network object, if this network interpolated transform component is attached to a game object side by side with the network synchronization script, the network synchronization script will call this function, setSync Data. This is the opportunity for us to read the AMP value from the binary reader that's been provided. So, just to recap, you can set up your own get and set data functions that work hand in hand with the broadcast message that's being sent to the server for each game object that you are setting up to be synchronized over your network. In the getSync function, you can add information to it, and then in the setSync function, you can read information from it. This allows you to add additional information that is synchronized over the network automatically with the network synchronization component. It's broadcast based on the regular broadcast frequency, just like your position and the orientation of your network game objects.